Welcome to the Through the Dark Woods podcast, a space for conversation around navigating grief and trauma, ancestral healing, cultural repair, village building, and deep nature connection. What will it take to rebuild healthy, connective culture in a world where we've lost so much? Schools don't teach this stuff. Western society has spent the last 1,000 years destroying these old ways of knowing. I believe that these skills are the essential ingredients needed for us to navigate a global crisis of ecocide. My name is Josiah Tamir Crossley. I'm your host. I'm a somatic therapist, grief worker, and the founder of Through the Dark Woods, Real Life Skills for Navigating Grief and Trauma, a 3-month-long online skill-building and process-based group which helps participants find the heart in our common humanity while building resilience and increasing our capacity to be with the more difficult emotions and the full, beautiful aliveness of being human. You can find out more at www.josiahtamircrossley.com/dark-woods or sign up for the free intro session on September 20th at www.josiahtamircrossley.com/into-the-ashes. Links are also in the show notes. I acknowledge that this podcast is produced where I live and work in Kathat, unceded traditional territory of the Clayaman, Clahoose, and Sushal peoples, and my ancestors were settlers on this land. I acknowledge that I'm still learning and may make mistakes in this regard, but that my intention and prayer is that this podcast and my privilege may directly and indirectly support repair of the harm done through colonization of this land and its traditional peoples. May this work benefit all beings everywhere. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May we all recognize liberation together. So welcome everybody. I'm here today with Christopher Griffiths, and Chris has worked in the field of emergency medicine as a paramedic for the last 20 years. And he took part in the most recent round of Through the Dark Woods Real Life Skills for Navigating Grief and Trauma with me. And I've asked him to come and share a bit about his experience, both personally and also how what he learned and went through really applies to the work that he's doing in the world. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Yeah. This is great.
Yeah, great to have you here and to be in person.
Yes, first time.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. So maybe we could start by, if you just want to share a little bit about what drew you to stepping into grief work in general and also the sessions.
Sure. Yeah. Just as in any change in your life, when you're moving from one area to another, there's going to be some changes in what's going to happen and what you attach to. So I was working, commuting back and forth, trying to work one place and live in another.
Oh, okay.
And so I had kind of two lives going. Mm-hmm. I had this life where I was really, really active, doing crazy shift work and really exciting work, but I also had my own time. Mm-hmm. So between the shifts, it was just me time. And so I do a lot of things for me and interact with a lot of people and that. And then when the shift came about 3 years ago, I came back home and now I was full-time at home.
Okay.
And so my life...
And home is Salt Spring Island.
Home is Salt Spring Island, yeah.
Okay. And where were you commuting to, just to give us an idea of?
North Surrey.
North Surrey. Okay, so that's a bit of a journey to go in, weekly or?
Every 8 days you go back and forth. So
yeah, so that's some significant stress to be.
Yeah, so you're only home for 3 days and 3 hours.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like the super dad for 3 days and 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then you have this 4.5 days kind of on your own.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can leave your work there. The ferry kind of decompresses each way. It's a nice back and forth. Yeah. It's a 3-hour tour, and you get a chance to review what you just were at, and then where you're going, and then vice versa on your way back.
Yeah, but you were counting every hour that you're at home.
Yes. Yeah, because it became very precious.
Yeah.
Right? So what you could do.
Yeah.
So as that was happening, it was really exciting to start with, that sort of like almost romance phase of a new home or a new alignment and everything. But as things started... Being back at home.
Yeah, okay, got it.
But as that balance of trying to find where I fit into this home, again, as a full-time parent and being at home and the change in the shifts. And so I was kind of not sure how I fit in yet. Yeah. And so I reached out to figure out where do I really want to be for my work, because I was not really engaging in my work. So I talked to someone about and they had suggested maybe I was grieving the loss of my old life, the a slightly more ego-driven role with a lot of independent time.
Right. And also big city emergency medicine, like fast-paced.
Fast-paced,
yeah. A little bit different than Salt Spring.
Yeah, and so that was, they were suggesting that I was grieving that.
Yeah.
And so I started digging into that, and then I started like going like, well, what things have influenced me, and, what's making me feel this way. And, every time I reached out for it to be some exterior thing, it always brought me back to it's me. And then I would blame the world, and then I would blame my partner, and because I'm trying to like grab at something.
Yeah, it's like, what is it? It's got to be something out there.
Yeah, there's something out there that's making me feel this way. And what is it? Yeah. And so, as that search was happening, I was disengaging from my family, and I was spending more time watching TV and being on my phone and spending that time, escaping the life that I'm living, so I don't have to deal with the life I'm living. And so as that happened, one night I happened to be watching TV and scrolling through my phone on the exchange, and I saw your little ad. And it just, it's like 9:00 at night, kids are in bed, and just, what is this thing? And I was like, because I saw something about grief. I was like, okay, maybe I'll look into this.
Yeah, and the seed had been planted by that other person.
Yeah. So the seed had been planted, and then I was like, okay, so I read up on the website, read a few things. Like, okay, this is kind of interesting, and then sort of like, I guess the other thing I had kind of picked up on was life is kind of happening for you, not to you, and the concept about like, things are being put in front of you, and whether you choose to engage with it or not is a choice. And
following the synchronicity or not.
And and it's a little bit of like, it's almost that kismet feeling where you're like, okay, I work Tuesday to Friday. Okay, the weekends are usually with the kids. Monday's my me day. It was always been my me day. So I was getting music lessons and trying to do things for myself. So learn how to play guitar, which I haven't really been playing much recently, to be honest.
It's a learning curve.
It's a learning curve. Yeah, when you can't strum, it makes it challenging.
Yeah,
learning guitar. I'm good.
It takes a lot of time.
And so I, just settling in, and this course. Let's try to get back to where we were.
Oh, you were saying Monday happened to be.
Oh yeah, and
day.
So it was my day, and then all of a sudden this course is on Mondays.
Yeah.
From 5 to 7, I was like, wow, that couldn't have lined up better for my life, because it's a really useful time for me to be able to be. I don't have any commitments on anything, and and it's for me.
Yeah, perfect.
And so I was like, okay, I'll listen to do the first trial.
Oh yeah, and I remember you came to that first session.
So I came to the first session, and I kind of listened, and I didn't really kind of believe in it. So really, kind of, I was skeptical about it, because I have a very scientific based mind, and the analytical approach, and have to get all this information to be able to make decisions, and that's the way my brain's always worked, and it never really. It was touching on spirituality.
Or, here I am talking about ancestors and nature, soul.
And I had been doing yoga for over a year. And so that was connecting me to myself.
Yeah.
And this, I don't know, there was just something about the space that was created, just being there, the way the tone people were using, the pace of it, the cadence, how it was just, it was easygoing, and it was like an accepting and this healing energy with it. And it was just like, these people here all share something in common, and it's non-judgmental, and it's open, and it's something that you just don't put into words easily. But it's just like there's work being done here that I haven't touched into before, about healing yourself.
Yeah, so it's pretty new in a way.
Very new. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, so that was really interesting, just a little bit with it, and I was just like, so I thought about it for a day after the trial, and then I was like, you know what, I'm going to sign up for this.
Yeah,
I just got to do it.
Yeah.
So within hours after signing up, just past grievances just start flowing through. It's like I, that metaphor of uncorking.
Yeah.
It's like I had done that, and I had uncorked all these past perceived traumas and all these past perceived things.
Yeah.
And it was just like, where's all this coming from?
And did it feel like overwhelming or more like?
At times.
Yeah.
At times, but in general, they were smaller things.
Okay. Yeah.
And they were like, little behaviors that happened in my childhood that made me feel a certain way or that way. So just little things started creeping in, and then the bigger things started to come in. Like what did this play a role in who I thought I was, and what did this play a role in how I see the world or perceive the world?
Right. So, and that was even before we started.
Hadn't even started the course. Hadn't even started. So I was kind of like learning to observe what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Because I had started doing some journaling, and I was observing my own thoughts, and I was like, what am I trying to tell myself now? Where am I going? Like, what am I doing? And where are these coming from?
Yeah, like what the fuck?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, and is it a good thing that I sent out that email? The first email says, you may be having some stuff coming up.
Yeah.
Now that you've committed.
I just thought it was really profound that it was that by voluntarily choosing to expose yourself to something that you fear.
Yes.
You just start releasing.
Yes.
I never thought of it this way or felt it this way. And it was just so new that like, wow, like I've heard sayings similar to that, like when they talk about people that have phobias of stuff, right? It's like choosing to expose yourself to it.
Right.
Like if you're afraid of needles, you put a needle on across the room on the table.
Yeah, like exposure therapy idea.
Right. Yeah, that kind of idea, but just by saying, go ahead, remove the towel from it so I can see it.
Yeah.
That's your choice to see it.
Yeah.
And just by doing that. So I found it really interesting to have this kind of happening to me.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've always observed it from the other side point of view. So that made it challenging to...
Right, because in the work you do, you probably see that in people all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we started into the sessions. Yeah. So that was going from like, escapism and indulging and spending all this time escaping to be with yourself, but you're not really with yourself. You're avoiding your own life.
Yeah, kind of distracting.
Yeah. And so to find yourself again and just everything was already leading that way just because of my disconnection behavior. It was already causing some challenges.
Right. It's like sometimes we have to go into the down that road in order to get things really bad.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, how bad can it get? Okay, now when it's that bad, I actually have to turn it around.
Yeah. I read something at one point from someone that said along the lines of like, if you actually dig deeper into it purposely, it will force you to get out.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've never approached it that way, but it was just something that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So
it was happening.
Yeah, it was happening. Yeah. Delving deeper was happening, and that just led us to the space that was created in starting the sessions.
Yeah, and you went deep.
Oh yeah, no,
I went deep in the session. Yeah, I didn't know actually until just you told me right now that this was new to you.
Oh, 100%.
You really dove in. Yeah.
I was numb. Like I was not experiencing feelings at all.
Yeah.
I didn't experience joy, but I also didn't experience the sadness.
Right.
So I got to sit in this place where I didn't have to feel one way or the other.
Yeah.
It made it really easy for my workplace.
Yeah.
Because someone else is having their worst day, but I can
stay neutral.
I can stay neutral and reassure them and be in that place and be present for them.
Yeah.
Right. And so that they can see that someone else can take care of them.
Yeah.
And, help them with their emergency. And then you can, once that closes, then you can let the emotions after.
Yeah, right. But I would imagine after a time, it's like, it's hard to even access those emotions. Like you're saying, you kind of just get generally numb when you're constantly being exposed to basically trauma, heavy duty trauma situations on the daily. If you're working in the big city, I would imagine.
Daily.
Yeah. So you'd gone numb.
So I'd gone numb.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was sitting in that place of numbness. And as we started the shuttle exercises and
the writing,
but it was just the format, how you discuss things and create the space by using poetry or using a story or myth or talking about a certain component of healing or talking about shame or talking about guilt or you're creating that space to think about it.
Right.
And as that space gets created and then you have this exercise.
Yeah.
right? So you've created the space in your mind so you can relax, to let yourself let go and go into the exercise.
Yeah.
And then so like the first one, I think I did I miss, where writing, where I would write about like the things I missed. Like I missed my childhood. I missed the enjoying of, riding BMX bikes and, playing with friends and riding, walking to school, just fun, easy activities.
Yeah.
And then it ended with my ear getting clipped by my mom when she was cutting my haircut.
Oh, wow.
Well, because I was watching TV I can still remember it. Like I'm sitting in a chair watching TV from the kitchen, and the family room was like a half flight down. Right. So I could see the TV from like 40 feet away or 30 feet away.
You were focused.
And I was focused on the TV. And then I guess as I turned.
She cut your ear.
She cut my ear.
Wow, so that like trauma memory came forward.
Yeah, so that's how it finished.
Right.
Which was interesting. That's what opened up, was like this, I miss all this stuff, enjoying my life, and then the thing in childhood, and then it ended with that.
Yeah, so. And I remember that actually, because I don't think you shared specifically about that in that session, but I remember, I forget if it was you or someone else who was talking about like, oh wow, it's interesting how like all these positive or like joyful memories came forward, and then it was kind of mixed with also the trauma memories. And actually that's such a important and critical way of working with trauma, is to have we call it resourcing in somatic work, to have that connection with the joyful memories, with the playfulness, with the curiosity. And then it's like, well, now once we connect enough with that, then it's like we can have the capacity almost to allow the trauma memory to come up and just move through. So I really saw you doing that in there. Yeah.
So that was really interesting. And so that was just like, okay, this work's interesting. And so I wrote a few things down in the journal that night, just to kind of like, sort of go over what we had gone through. And so I was able to sort of review what we had learned and where I could bring that into my life. And so that was, interesting. And then we moved into like, I'm trying to remember what the next one was. What was the second session? That was the shame.
Yeah. The shame.
Oh, that was working with shame. Yeah. So that was, because I do hold a lot of shame. I still do.
It's a potent one.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people.
Yeah. And the shame that I hold it has a lot to do with not getting enough emotional support as a child.
Right. Yeah.
And so I wrote about it was forbidden, and it was just a list of things I was not allowed to do as a child. I wasn't allowed to express my emotions. I wasn't allowed to cry. I wasn't allowed to be emotional. I wasn't allowed to show emotion. Yeah. It was a very, very Welsh, stiff upper lip.
Yeah.
We don't show weakness. Right. And the loyalty's all in the family. So you have to do everything that they want you to do.
Right.
And you hold on to those beliefs. And I still hold on to some of them now.
Right. And that's that, like you said, that stiff upper lip. That's the very British or like colonial culture. That was really the culture.
Yeah. Time, right? Yeah. And so that got passed down to me.
Yeah.
And so I've had to sort of work through that to, I'm still working on it, but to get that through that, it was forbidden. And it released like all this past of like, I wasn't allowed to have any emotions or feel like I could emotions.
Right.
Because I never got or it's unlikely I got the physical cues from them about that everything, that it
would be okay to feel.
That's right.
It's unlikely that they were expressing their emotion, had that emotional literacy. Also probably. Yeah.
So our family extent of emotions was a smile.
Right.
Was our way of saying we love each other, but we never spoke it.
Yeah.
We didn't hug. We didn't we never had that. It was more of just you smiled at them and that let them know that everything was okay. And you could, and so I learned really early on to feel emotions of others because I stayed away from the anger or, what would happen if I did something that was incorrect.
Right.
And so it was sometimes
you learned how to track. Yeah, that's a common one too.
And so then I became aware of not just the one person in the room, but I would start to become aware of everyone in the room's feelings. And then I kept trying to use my interruptions as a way to balance the room.
Right.
So that people wouldn't be angry. Yeah. And the people that were upset wouldn't feel so bad. And I kept doing that over and over.
It was a skill you built, which makes for an excellent healthcare worker. Right? Like, because there's a gift in all of these things too.
Yeah.
Right? It really is. There's a gift in it. And I think it's like when we can become aware of the patterning, and then we still have that gift, but we can also moderate it with like, okay, I don't have to maybe do that all the time.
Yeah.
Right. Like that doesn't have to be my job to do that. Yeah. So you really started to see that pattern in that.
Yeah. And then we moved, I think we moved right into like, and I know we did a loving kindness one too.
Yeah. With Elizabeth Clareber.
Yeah. The tongue. That was really hard.
Yeah. Compassion for self.
Yeah.
It's one of the most challenging things.
And so when that one, I don't know if that one was first or not. Did we do the?
I think that was later on. Yeah.
Oh, we did the pendulation first.
Yeah.
Before we saw Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And that was just sort of that working in and out of the
right. That's that back and forth from the resource place to the challenging parts. Yeah, that was potent for you too.
Well, that was the big thing was the pillow exercise.
Oh yes, the layers
that
of
just
holding
changed me. I mean, that was like because we had this beautiful buildup of of thinking about a part of you that hasn't felt love or that needs love or however it was worded. It was just beautiful. And when I hugged that pillow, man, I just let go. I started crying and releasing all this like built up that I had no love for myself.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting that as that happened.
To like somatically bring that love in.
Yeah.
And have those parts be held.
Oh,
yeah.
That was intense. So that was very emotional for me to explore that.
Yeah.
Because I'm starting to feel a connection between love and crying. I'm starting to notice a connection between the two and how they can be quite related.
Yeah, say a bit more about that.
I don't know much about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm exploring it and I'm finding it really interesting that it used to be really hard for me to cry about anything.
Yeah.
Even when it was like, an animal dying or a person, it was really challenging for me to get that up. But the animals, because they're dependent upon us, that it was really easy for me to love and to cry, right? But when they're not dependent upon us, so someone else outside of that, if they die, it's different. And so there's a different approach for me. Okay. But it was just trying to figure out this love and crying part, and taking care of myself. And I can hear music now again, like feel music, not just hear the words and memorize the words. Yeah. It's now about like what they're trying to say. The feeling, the emotional body. And I had I'd heard these songs 1,000 times. Right. Yeah. And now I'm hearing everything again. I'm like, wow, they're talking about some really deep stuff. But before, I always treated it as a superficial, we're just creating a song for fun song. Right. But no, like there's some pain and why these good songs become so great is probably draw some kind of charter that could relate the two between how emotional pain and someone has to how it's sung, if it's not their song, but what they're trying to express, the pain that they went through, whether it's hardship or breakup or, losing a family member or whatever it is, their struggles with drug and abuse. Yeah. You can now hear it in it. Yeah. And so it's, it's just so freeing. I love that you're saying that because, I really think that music is one of the primary ways, like it's an old way of expressing grief. And of grieving. Like singing is like crying, laughing is like crying, Well, you're making a poem about, and you're attaching it to music. Yeah, exactly. And that's a great way of expressing yourself. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and that's where like poems just started coming in for me. Yeah, right. Yeah, you did some incredible writing. Because we did that. We did that exercise after the pillow exercise. We wrote a shuttle. I'm trying to remember what it was about. I think it was I Miss. And this the way it came out. I just started having these like emotional words started coming out in my writing. Before it was like very task orientated or like specific things, but it wasn't about emotion. Right. And this is the first one I wrote about emotion. Yeah. And writing about it, and it was coming from a place of love. Like you could feel it was coming from a place of love. Yeah, totally. And then the assignment for the homework was to take that and take some words out of it and make a small poem out of that. Yeah. And then so from the words of it though, it was like, the 6 words were like visceral warming, the is it authentically hurting
Yeah.
or authentically hurts, and then quivering unknown.
Yeah.
And it was just, and they were in order. I didn't orderize them myself. I just literally just circled 6 words, and those are the ones that came out.
Yeah, beautiful.
But it was like
just, synchronicity again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That these things came out, and it just it just started like inspiring me to like, this is really interesting stuff. And then we had the Elizabeth one.
Right.
And that's the Tunglen. Oh.
Yeah.
And so for the Tunglen, like for me, like when I went through it, when we discussed before and prepared for it, where you're talking about you're going to be breathing in pain and breathing out love and that sort of thing. And as soon as I went to take the first breath, lungs just filled up with water.
Wow.
Like it was just instantaneously.
Instant grief.
Like there was nothing.
Yeah.
It went from totally breathing normally to like, oh my God, I'm drowning almost.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And so that was kind of interesting. Later on, I think I read in Pema Chodron's The Wisdom of No Escape, she talks about that can happen to you.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like it was just really interesting that happened.
Yeah.
And then on the breath out, it was just emptiness. So there's nothing coming out.
Yeah.
So it was telling me a lot about myself, and I didn't really realize it, that I was like, wow, I am sitting in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And for myself, and that I don't have enough love to give anywhere else, not even enough for myself to be able to give any out.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting to go through this, and it started sparking that energy part of that spirituality where, there's this unknown, but there's this energy that happens between people and between things, and trying to sort of figure out what is this thing. There's more than us, and it's not something that always can be explained.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But you can still anecdotally explain it from one to another to another. It's a feeling you get when you start tapping into that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a feeling. So then when we can tap into it, when we're not numb anymore and we can feel, it's like, oh, now we have access to that interconnection.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So it was just starting to move. And that's when after that session, that's when I wrote my first like full poem about being numb. And that was so freeing, because I was building up to that. I was reading a lot of books about a lot of different things. There was one about being numb. It was a very specific book called Numb, and I read that one. And then
it was a big exploration for you.
Yeah.
Really like what's going on here. Did you bring that poem?
Oh, I have it. Yeah. Yeah, I'll read Numb. So Numb, this was just written right after the Tunglen. Overwhelmed senses, what to do. Keep them inside. That'll protect you. Undigested memories poison the mind. Splintered thoughts, even harder to combine. Simple pleasures, such a bore. Give me something hard to ignore. Supports pushed away, can't ask for help. I will do this by myself. Hide the truth, continue the lies, live with the pain for the rest of our lives. I don't know them, but they can see me. Surrender your ego, be set free. Forgive yourself for having to conceal. Set your intention, begin to heal. Self-compassion for the ways we've had to cope. Pendulate into the deep, search for a new hope. Create a space, not just on your floor. Open your mind, plenty to explore. Breath goes in and out, blood goes round and round. Connect with your body, much to be found. Numbed emotions fester secretly inside. Connect with others, nothing to hide.
It's so powerful.
Yeah, and so so some of the readings that I had were just leading me in these directions of this way and that way and this way and that way, and just kept exploring all these things that I was just unknown to me, and why I was feeling this way, or what was making me think this way. Or at least creating thoughts for me to go this direction. Yeah,
you're really bringing a huge amount of curiosity to the patterning, right? And that's key.
Yeah. So after that session, writing that poem, and then it was the day before our next session, and I was feeling there was some guilt and some shame about my relationship with my partner. because of now realizing things are different. But that writing about where I was at and where we were before.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, well, this is the person I want to be with, and this is the, there's so many wonderful things about them. Yeah. Why am I feeling this separated from them? And then so I just started writing questions to myself. So I was like, that sort of like third person kind of idea, like talking to myself as the diary. And as I did that, I just started getting into this mode of like, okay, what's bothering me from the outside world? And I was like, well, that doesn't get me anywhere. It just turns me around to improving yourself.
Right.
And then I was like looking, what are other people affecting me? No, it just turns back to myself. And then I just started digging deep into like, what is it that's really bothering me?
Yeah.
What's holding me back? And then it just, it was already in my mind, but it was like, I wasn't ready. But now I was like, I was like, okay, well, I can write down the feelings of what I felt when I went through that trauma. And so I just started writing my feelings, how I was trapped and how I was in fear, just all the different sensations I had when that situation happened.
Yeah.
And then I was able just to write enough to say when I was abused. And that was all it took. And it was like a relief. And I was telling myself, that's enough. I don't have to go any deeper. Right? But then I wrote like one more sentence or something like that after about it. But it was more than, I'd never written anything about it. I'd never spoken about it, nothing.
Wow.
And it was just so powerful to do that.
Yeah, to acknowledge.
Yeah.
And to name it for yourself even.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was like a relief just from that.
Yeah.
Just knowing like it's an excitement, but at the same time relief. It's these more than one emotion happening at once.
Yeah.
To start, because I'm starting to have emotions now, and it's interesting how I could now engage with my feel as I'm writing it. Because there's times where like in that session, because I ended up just typing out that session and making it into a letter for my wife to read, because it wasn't the intention of it for her to read. It was for me
to be able to express to yourself.
But I didn't feel like I was strong enough to be able to tell her this. So I thought,
but you wanted her to know.
I wanted her to know.
Yeah. So
by writing that out, and then from there it just opened up about our relationship, and how like. It's interesting because interspersed throughout this, I start describing what's happened in the last week of like not saying I love you to each other, and like because we always did, and we stopped texting each other I love you, and like all those things had like, where had that gone? I'd written that question down. Where has this gone? Why have we do it? I appreciate it, or I don't appreciate when they say it, but I still feel it.
Yeah, well, and it really is those little things, isn't it, that bridges that river.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's you need that work. You need to let your partner know where you're at. You need to communicate with your partner what you're feeling. And it wasn't happening as often. We've gotten into our own lives.
Yeah, and more distant. Yeah. And so how is that? I know you mentioned that you're doing some like marriage therapy work, and so how is that? How do you think that has affected, like, where are you guys at now?
Well, it hasn't been a smooth ride. No,
it's not. It never is, right? It's not like, and then happily ever after.
Yeah. So I guess by writing that down, it freed me. Yeah. And freedom. And that happened on the Sunday. We had our session on the Monday, and I was totally distracted. But it was about an outcast, I think it was, and I was already thinking that way from the homework from the previous one, where we had communicated, and you kind of challenged me about the transmutation of things, and then so I took that information and was able to sort of like still be able to live off that, but my mind is just in this other world. It's in this other world. I'm able to still be here and do the stuff, but my mind is over a different spot. Right. And that week long, knowing that we wanted a special time to be able to share that information. You and your wife. To share with my wife. I wanted to make sure that she didn't have to work in the morning. That just in case because it would be really heavy on her too, right? Yeah. Sharing your deepest secret with your partner. Yeah. That's a pretty intimate thing, and you don't want to just like have to go to work in the morning. You want to create the space for it. Yeah. So you were waiting for that. So I was waiting for that, and then on the Friday, when she had finished her work. And so then I shared the letter, and, and she was, it was a lot for me, huge and heavy for me, but it was really casual for her, right? Because she has no idea what it is.
Right.
She knows I'm working through some stuff. She, she has no idea what she's going to be stepping into. But then after she read it, just this freedom came over, and we had a pretty good evening, holding hands and visiting with her mom, a little more closeness. But when I woke up in the morning, it was like I was almost reborn in a way. I had this, I no longer held anything. My shoulders didn't have any weight on them, and it was just so freeing. I no longer identified with that past. It was gone. No more unhappiness. No more deep suffering. That fear that you have, it wasn't there anymore. It was just elated that everything was brighter, vivid. It was being present for the first time in a really, where I was not, letting my past identify me, and I wasn't anxious about what was going to happen or reaching for fulfillment for anything. I was just in this lovely place, and man, and that felt so good, and that just continued, like the energy level. Well, not really sleeping that much.
Right, super high energy,
and I just started walking in the morning and all these other things. But it brought us closer together as a partnership. But then as my changing happens, it's hard to almost connect with that person you're with, because you don't know who that person is. You can't feel who that person is.
Right. It's like you're becoming a new person, and so is she, probably over time, right? So kind of like day to day, how do you bridge that? That connection.
I'm trying to kind of feel what the word is again, but there's just something that is, you just can't grasp where that person is. You don't know what their feelings are. You're not sure, what are they saying? You're looking at the reference points you use to gauge where that person's at, and
it's hard to
know who this person is, because you're not recognizing the facial responses. Because I think I'm probably looking up more. I'm probably more aware of my environment instead of just looking down. I'm now looking at this person.
Right. So there's almost more like curiosity alive in you, that you're like, what is actually going on here? Yeah.
And it's hard for them to also see who I am. So they might, who's this person? They don't feel like the same person. How do I connect with this person? Because they're giving a different wavelength now, or something along that vibration that they talk about.
Well, and I just love this, Chris, because I think the norm, shall we say, is that many people are going along in partnership, in relationship, long term, with the river in between you, with the river in between the two people, and you're just doing your own thing, calling it a partnership, maybe raising kids, and not really conscious of the lack of that deeper connection there. And so even, and it's often I think when we suddenly get to this place where we're like, oh wait, we're not really connected, it can feel kind of devastating at first, but really it's that's one step towards the deeper, to being able to find the deeper connection. So it's a beautiful place to be in, although more challenging, because it's now we're feeling all the feelings.
So I can remember in my journal I wrote something about just this yearning for emotional and physical intimacy. I wanted to feel intimate with my partner again, because I brought back these feelings of when we were together, when we did all these things together, and we would build a bond, and it feels like those activities have gone, and I know raising children and stuff can be distracting. Because kids are up, and there's just everything changes. You no longer have the house to yourselves. You're sharing this, and the focus is more on how to raise these kids than it is on the partnership. And but keeping that going I'm just seeing how important it was, and how we had neglected that.
So there's now this aliveness in you that's oh man, this is important.
So I have to build this. And that part of that growth was that connecting with the outcast, connecting with my gift of because I was so hypervigilant all the time,
Yeah.
I was always feeling the room, feeling the emotions of everyone, and trying to get everyone to get along, and try to be calm,
the peacemaker.
And try to be that way all the time. And it was draining.
Right.
Totally. And the energy, you're just
Yeah.
losing all this energy. So that you want to be on your own because you're just, I need to recharge. But it's interesting because I recharge actually by being with people. I want to escape because I don't want to deal with that feeling.
Yeah.
But I actually get more energy by being around others.
You're finding that now that you.
Yeah. Well, since that release, like the connections, the conversations, they're way more meaningful.
Beautiful.
You connect with people.
Yeah, there's a real connection there instead of you kind of feeling this responsibility or role to like regulate everyone, which is a really great skill as a paramedic to be able to come in and kind of regulate the room. And at the same time, it is, like you said, it is exhausting to be constantly in that role and in that dynamic, which, my understanding is when we're in that kind of archetype, it comes from very early attachment wounding. And so, amazing that you're able to, at least even partially step out of that, right?
Yeah. And that's opened doors into like my perception of childhood emotional neglect. Right. Not that my parents did anything wrong. They were amazing parents.
Yeah, they do their best. Right?
They did all the physical needs. They were always there for me that way. It's just because they didn't recognize that I was a highly sensitive person. Yeah. And they didn't have the skill set to be able to share emotional connection with me.
Yeah, they probably didn't receive it right, either. So it's like what we don't receive, how can we know that to pass that on to our children? I mean, unless we do a lot of work. Yeah,
I find some of the focus is on the things that happen to people, but there's also this whole other place, the things that you didn't get.
Yes. Yeah, the relational trauma.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting because I never even thought of it that way. You always think of like the negative things that happened throughout your life. Yeah. And there's all these things that you didn't get. Yeah. That actually you didn't miss out on anything. You
didn't know it was missing. Yeah. But our biology, I think our biology and our nervous system knows that it's missing. Yeah. And so and then we start to become aware of it and become, as we heal, we can start to become aware of that real deep need. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the perfect transition because I wanted to ask you about your son.
Oh. Yeah. Because, man, I mean, my son has always been a very open, creative, builds, like, with his grandpa, he builds, like, board games. He's built, like, 3 different board games. Wow. He's written a little tiny snippet of a poem. He's taken those little wooden dolls that you use for like posing for drawing, and he was using socks to make clothing for them. Oh my god, amazing. just so creative, just so open.
And how old is he?
He's 12.
He's 12.
Yeah. And not within 2 weeks of when I let go. And it might have even been a week. Like it felt like it was just happened.
Really closely.
Yeah. And then he just opened up to me and he said he's gay. And it was just something that, like, because I was probably to him seemed more open and relaxed.
There was a safety there that he could feel.
Yeah, that he sensed that and he felt it was okay that he could tell me.
Yeah, wow.
And it was just so wonderful. And I thanked him for sharing and letting him know, and glad that he's feeling who he is and he's connecting with that. Yeah, he's not trying to be something someone else wants him to be, and he can just be whoever he wants to be. And just accepting that he can, I'll love him regardless of whatever he chooses to do. We're all human beings. That's the bottom line. If you find something that you connect with, go with it. These are all, I don't know, they're just different manifestations of who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just all people. I just want people to be happy, and I want him to be happy, and him to love, and him to feel what it feels like to love and to be loved by someone, and that's all that matters, because that's really what makes you feel like a human, or makes you feel like a whole person, is being able to feel love and to feel and to share love. Yeah. So I just don't know about that.
I think I just hands down to you, like he's a very fortunate young man to have a dad like you that can really receive him and reflect back to him in that way, and at such a tender young age still to be able to embrace his full sexuality, his full beingness, and it's really, really amazing, and amazing that it came kind of synchronistically with you having this deeper opening in yourself and release and availability, probably, like you said, for him. So.
Yeah, well, I was probably quite distracted with what I was working on.
For a little bit, yeah.
Feel like this was a time.
Right.
Because he knows I'm distracted by the work I'm doing.
Yeah.
But when I released, and he probably sensed that, oh, there's this space.
Yeah.
He's created this space.
Right.
I can get closer to him. And I can be more intimate with him. And he can tell me this. So it was, is. It's just beautiful that he could do that.
It's so wonderful. Yeah. During the group in the spring, during our sessions, or during that time, you also lost your grandmother.
Yeah. That happened on the Mother's Day. It was the day before our next session.
Yeah.
It happened on the Sunday. We had our session on the Monday.
Yeah.
And so I was quite distracted. And, and it was too bad because the going with the Randy Jones and...
Right, that was when we had Randy Jones on and did the story work.
My intention was to work on what I'm trying to understand about myself and dealing with my past trauma. That was my focus and how I can use that and, the idea of uncorking it and that sort of thing. But I couldn't because my grandmother was just weighing over me.
Yeah, she'd just passed the day before.
Yeah, like
and you were with her.
Yeah, well, I spent the 3 nights doing sort of what would be considered like hospice care, or where you're just holding their hand all night. Just being with them, letting them know they're not alone, letting them know that they're safe, and that when they're ready, that they can choose to move on, and they can choose that. So it's
wow. And again, so fortunate for her that I think so many people, well, especially during this time of COVID, I mean, so many people have died alone, totally alone. So what a blessing that you're able to be with her that way, and it was a powerful experience for you.
It was. So I actually had to re-listen to that one, and so I went through it again, and I was able to connect it to my story. Now that I felt like I was grieving still, but it wasn't so active.
Oh yeah.
Right now, I was into the passive part where you're reflecting on how wonderful her life was and all the great memories you have with them. So I was able to move on to deal with my trauma, and then it allowed me to write the story of the process that I went through in a way, and I was able to type that up and just have at least sort of like what I felt because of that story, understanding that when you're ready, you can uncork something, but you can always put it back on.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the cork bottle,
and it's your choice.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of to me, that voluntarily choosing to do it.
Yes.
Not trying to gain something, but just voluntarily choosing to expose yourself to it is, like, for me, that just feels like the key.
Yeah.
It is the key that you're putting into the lock, or the keystone to the doorway that holds it open for you. Yeah. Whatever that is, but that's the sensation it feels like to unlock all this other stuff.
Right. And that choice is so important because the timing has to be right? The timing. And like you said, there was a lot of synchronicity that led you to know that stepping into this work at that time was the right thing for you. Yeah, I'm curious, actually, with that, what would you say to someone who is kind of in a place of like not sure if it's the right time for them? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's still that point about choosing, but you have to have that a desire to actually get out of the unhappiness, to get out of that suffering, because suffering is easy. It's almost easier in some ways because it's the path of least resistance, and we love that as humans. So anytime you don't do the path of least resistance, you make your own path, everything opens up. And when you're choosing your own path, you're in control. It's that concept of playing tag. When someone else is and you're being chased by them, that fear you get, you're trying to run away from them. Yeah. But the second you get tag and you become the aggressor, what happens?
You're in control.
And it's just all of a sudden now you have no fear. Now you have this energy to go get someone, right? And it's a childhood game, but it's just it can't happen that easy.
Right.
You just
turn it around. Yeah, I love that. And I mean, that's a funny analogy. I haven't heard that one before, but it's great. And it reminds me of, how they say in dream work, if you're being constantly chased by something, there's so much power in turning around and facing the thing, because it will usually completely dissolve or turn into something, a dragon turns into a mouse or,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, I definitely have experienced personally and have witnessed a lot of people. It's like when we turn towards the pain, it's not to say that it's easy, right? But that it's a lot easier than running from it in a way, like you said, the suffering is easy in a way because it's quote unquote like comfortable in a way, right? But there's something just beautiful about being able to turn towards it and recognize our common humanity in that place.
It's that the analogy for me that got me was the analogy of like a shadow. If you have a flashlight and you shine it on the fear and you're looking at the shadow of the fear, if the flashlight's really close to that object, it makes the shadow look really big. But when you turn and look at it's just a small little fear. And we live in the shadow of this fear and we're afraid to look at that. And by turning and looking at it, it takes its power away.
Yeah, exactly. We recognize, and then we also can recognize the the gift within it, right? Which is often almost always the case.
Yeah, when you mentioned dreams there, it reminded me because I started dreaming again. I hadn't really been dreaming.
Okay.
And it would open up dreams. I started having these, some of them were really kind of twisted. Yeah. But it was really interesting because throughout that process, I had these, not recurring, but like dreams of similar things where it was like I had to kill off all these demons, like these people. I was being attacked.
Wow.
And I had to I don't have really an aggressive gene in my body. At least I don't feel like I do. I don't really get aggressive. I don't really raise my voice. The odd time when the dog does something stupid, but I don't really. But it's really my fault because it's probably I didn't give it enough commands or whatever. The dog. Yeah, I know. Yeah, but I lost my thought there.
Well, you're saying you're not aggressive, but you were finding that aggressive or anger.
I had to.
The dreams.
I had to my dream to defend myself.
Yeah. Wow.
So it was really it was outside of my character to have to defend myself against all. It was just. Right. It started out. You could see a little bit of face with them, but then it just turned into like. The common analogy now would be like zombies, but they weren't like zombies at all. They were like just humans, but they were pretty much all men. I don't remember seeing any women, and it was just they were all coming at me, and I felt like I was trapped. Yeah. But the only way to get out was I couldn't run anywhere. Yeah. So I had to fight. Right. And I don't fight. So I wonder. Yeah. What my subconscious was trying to tell me. Oh yeah. That it's up to me to turn and fight these things, or I don't know. I don't know much about dreams, but yeah. Well, we talk in somatic work. We talk about just anger or as primal life force energy, and that sometimes when we've had trauma happen and we shut that down because we go into freeze, and then we don't allow ourselves to access that even in like normal day-to-day situations where it might actually be the most effective. And not of course violence is never effective, but no. but it's like when the energy is like really pent up from from a trauma or from an abuse, it's like we actually have to sometimes in our imagination or in our dream life allow that more extreme anger or violence to come forward. Of course we would never want to do that in like reality, no. but to have a container of dream world or imagination world to be able to allow that to happen can actually move trauma out of the nervous system in a very potent way, and then open up that channel of being able to have healthy boundaries and that's opened up the different work for me for the dealing with anger and resentment. Yeah, and learning that my peace of mind is more important than being right or being correct or power over someone. Yeah, my peace of mind is way more important because I'm seeing that when you're in your own mind. Well, you're more in your body than you're in your mind. It's not like you're in your mind. You're just in your body and feeling your body. That presence and that calmness and that stillness and that just freedomness in yourself, that's where it's way better to be there than it is to be stuck in these discoursing thoughts. Yeah. And these, you're replaying or enumerating these things about, what someone did to you or what it was. It lets go. And it's just so nice not to hold that. And I was holding that for my partner too, because I was just zooming in on these little leaves on the tree that weren't working. Right. The sort of negative aspects. Yeah. And taking that point of view of like, what if everything was my fault? If I just treated everything like it was my fault, what would I need to do to correct this? How do I start making this a better way to live? What things can I change in my life that I can do better that would relieve myself of this burden? And so you just start looking at pieces of your life. This didn't work. Right. What do I have to do differently?
So real taking responsibility for,
taking responsibility for myself and the life I have and my partner and my kids and my immediate family and my coworkers and even the people that I visit and that sort of thing. Like I'm taking this new responsibility and by doing that and by being open and being positive, it changes others.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. I wanted to ask you about your work, and you had said something. Actually, I want to read what you wrote to me in the email.
I think it was something along the lines about how people are grieving. When people go through their worst day, they have to be able to grieve the old life they have to move on to the new life they have. Now they're living with a disease, and you can live your rest of your life with a lot of these diseases.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you adjust your life to fit that.
Right.
But if you still think you can still live the same way before.
Right.
And they get stuck in that until they realize that they don't have that much energy anymore.
Yeah.
They don't have that mobility anymore. They don't have those things. So it's about rebuilding what you can.
Right.
And then accepting what you can't change.
Right.
And helping them sort through that so that they can be free and not be burdened by their disease, but they can live with their disease. And that's that transition for them. Being there for them during that time when they transition from that worst day to the being attached to an institution, to letting them be free of that. Because it's really hard, because once you're in that system, if you have a long-term illness, you're connected.
You're going to be.
The rest of your life is connected to the, the medications or the physio or the life-changing things that can happen. But if you can free them, that's just a part of what your life is. Just as like you have to eat 3 times a day or however times you like to eat in a day.
Yeah, it becomes a part of your
that's
rhythm.
just your rhythm of that. It's not you.
Right. So what you're saying is, I mean, it sounds like it's kind of like a rite of it is a rite of passage when someone gets a diagnosis. Right. And I mean, Francis Weller loves to say, he had a client at one point high-powered businessman who came in and had a heart attack, and he came in for a couple of sessions, and then he was like, I think that one session that 2 sessions that we did is great, and I feel totally changed, and I'm going to go back to work as I've been working. And Francis said to him, don't waste a perfectly good heart attack, right? Like there's got to be something, some kind of deeper shift that comes from that. And so what I'm hearing you say is that there's a grief process.
It's a grief process.
Yeah.
And it takes that convincing event and the convincing experience. So for me, my convincing experience was writing that out. It was a big enough. My suffering was so much that it was telling me that I needed to do something about it.
Take some kind of Randy Jones would call it like a ritual action. Ritual action.
And so by writing it out, that was the convincing enough event for me to let go and to no longer identify with that and start moving on with my life and repairing the damage that was done. Forgiving myself for all the ways I've had to cope. The lifestyle I was living, the disconnected, and even though it was my safety place, it wasn't happy. And there was a deeper yearning to be happy and to be more fulfilled in my life. I felt like there was always something that everyone else had, but I didn't have it. Why am I not enjoying just even being in any great situation, family interactions, and just you feel so dead inside is not the right word, but it's you feel like there's just. Why am I not feeling anything here?
That numbness that you spoke
of. And so there was just something that was just pulling me towards that I needed to do something about it. And that was my convincing event. And in these cases, when people have had a convincing enough event, they make the changes. But if
they have the opportunity to.
That's right. That's right. And so some people choose to do that. Most adults, for any kind of major change in their life, require some kind of convincing event to change your pattern as an adult. You're so habitual in everything you do. and to have that event, and it opens the opportunity for growth. And that's where I was at. I was like, do I want to grow, or do I going to stay with the status quo? Can I live this way? Yeah. And when I asked myself that question, it was a hard no. Yeah. I can't live like this. This is not living. This is not enjoyable. This is not fun. You know, I'm ticking the boxes that my raising told me to do, and that the influences from the culture and the society around me was telling me to do. Yeah. I was doing that stuff. Yeah. And I'm like, that's supposed to be fulfillment. Right. But it's not.
It wasn't.
Because you're not connected to yourself. And by not being connected to yourself, you can't connect to the world.
Yeah. So, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I do want to read what you wrote here, because it's so potent. You said grief and medicine go hand in hand. When someone has their worst day, their tomorrow is never the same. When someone gets a diagnosis of terminal or life-altering disease, they go through the stages of grief. Some choose to change their habits after a convincing experience and learn to live for each day, while most just continue on with their status quo and adapt to their new normal. I spent 17 years responding to people's worst day, and now the majority of my work is dealing with chronic conditions that result from these events. I wonder, what can we as a health system do to support clients to make the lifestyle changes needed to empower them to living more fulfilling lives? How do we create space for them to grieve wholeheartedly and recalibrate their lives? And I love this, because this like you're now having this inquiry into what sounds like to me like, how can I bring this grief work into your work, right? Into your work more.
Can't even believe my own words, really.
It's funny to hear ourselves.
It is, because it's a different thought process that was happening at the time. And wow, like, there's a missing piece to helping someone grieve these changes that happen to us. And there's a gap in how we treat people. And that I know they get the physical needs. Here's your meds. Here's your treatment plans.
Yeah, there's a gap.
But where's the mental health support? Or mental disease, or whatever it is, the grief that they have to have.
The emotional,
because it's grieving who they were. Yeah. Right. Just as I realized I was grieving the loss of me when I changed careers. I had to grieve the loss of that ego that I identified so much with that past job, and I hadn't let that go, and that's why I was bypassing and living this disengaged life. And not feeling fulfilled, because I was still holding on to the past. And now I feel like I'm in the present, and it's just so wonderful.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for joining me and sharing your story with our listeners. Is there one last thing you'd like to leave our listeners with?
The supports and the resiliency we have from the people around us, and connecting with people helps you and supports you through your tougher times. But that yearning, that piece that you're missing in you, it's there already. You just, to tap into it. Taking on this is not easy, but man, is it worth it. The life changing from it. It's like everything just turns on. It's like there's a light in the world now. You know, everything. The light's bright. The people are bright. The people are wonderful and great and amazing, and all these wonderful individuals out there that we're just turning off because you were in your own world. And you open it up, and all of a sudden, just the conversations, the life, it's more fulfilling and enjoyable. And you want to do stuff in the day. You no longer want to lay in bed. You no longer want to escape. You want to get out and live life and do things, and realizing how precious life is, and the people around you, how special they are. And it's just so amazing to be able to go through this process and know that this is what, if I knew this before I hesitant to sign up for the course, it would have been totally different. I would have been like, I want to do this, but would I have not had the drive to do that? I don't know. Because if I had known that, I don't know how that would change someone's mind. So because you feel your sufferings at this point, you just go and do it and choose to do it. It makes a huge difference. And man, you just, it's
freedom.
Yeah.
And connection, right? That like when you're talking, I just can feel such aliveness there, and I really do think that, like you're saying, there's such a huge connection between being able to grieve well and having those skills to grieve well, and being connected to our full aliveness. And it's been so beautiful to just witness your your process and your journey through the sessions, and to go deeper into your story now. I'm so grateful. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your work. It's amazing. I look forward to September.
Yeah.
To go through more of this and tackle more of the things and get deeper and be able to share my story with other people and what I went through, and and like just bringing in things in your life that make it feel great.
Yeah, you're gonna be joining us again. I'm so grateful for that as well. I think it'll be a real gift to those who are jumping in new, and also the few others who will be joining us for the second round. Really looking forward to it as well. So beautiful. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. This has been another episode of the Through the Dark Woods podcast. I'm your host, Josiah Tamara Crossley. Stay in touch, like or follow this podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can also join my email list and stay tuned to upcoming offerings and events, as well as receive occasional missives and musings from my pen to your inbox. If you'd like to sign up or learn more about my work, go to www.josiahtamiracrossley.com. For the Through the Dark Woods, real life skills for navigating grief and trauma sessions, or our next free intro session, find those links in the show notes as well. May this work benefit all beings everywhere. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May we all recognize liberation together. Wishing you a harmonious day filled with connection to yourself, your people, and the natural world around you.